Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 historical fiction books that are perfect for fall. I'm so excited to talk to you about these books. I don't know, they're very Victorian literature inspired or connected with, but all perfect for fall and all spectacular historical fiction reads. So if you're new and you don't know me, then I'm Shelley and I love to read and I love historical fiction. That's been my jam for a little while. It's so much fun. So maybe subscribe if you're not, but without any further just rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I am loving this new setting, by the way. It's like, I don't know, it's giving me a breath of fresh air that I really needed. So let me know if you like it, and yeah, just pop a comment down below whether you like it, or if you don't, maybe just keep it to yourself. Okay, so all of my books are Victorian literature connected, inspired by, there's some connection in some way. The reason why is this. When I think of fall, I think of cozying up with a classic piece of literature. I think of cozy vibes, but I'm not really a cozy book reader. I'm just not. There's also this huge event called Victober that comes around every single year and has for, I think, 10 years now, where the hosts encourage us to read Victorian literature. And I don't know, we'll see if I actually read any Victorian literature, but I don't know, I was very inspired by the Gothic vibes, the atmospheric, like heavy atmospheric vibes, the twisty and turny characters that often come out of Victorian literature, and Victorian literature in general. So this is a historical fiction recommendations list heavily focused on Victorian literature vibes. Okay, so the first book is going to be based off of the Brontës. I actually have 2 books based off of the Brontës. This is actually Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And if you haven't read Wuthering Heights, it is worth a read. It is very over the top. But I read a historical fiction book that had to do with Emily Bronte, and it was 15 Wild Decembers by Karen Powell. Now, this is, of course, a historical fiction book about the Brontës, and particularly about Emily Bronte. She's our main narrator, but it's really about the struggle that these sisters go through in order to get their manuscripts published or recognized. And there are these moments, rather, where Emily is walking through the moors or she's walking through the fields and it's gloomy out, and her cheeks are getting wind whipped and there's this wetness to the air. And in a lot of ways, it very much feels like we are there on the moors with the Brontës, but also Emily's literature in particular, if I am remembering correctly, her literature in particular is very atmospheric, and there is a heavy emphasis on sort of like, I don't want to say bleak, but sort of sullen nature of London's moody weather. So 15 Wild Decembers not only illuminates the relationship that the sisters have with one another, but also the relationship that the sisters have to their own writing, and the relationship that the sisters have to their brother, who, because of his gender and because of his status, had a much easier time getting opportunities than they did, and yet Bromwell, the brother, often squandered those opportunities. So 15 Wild Decembers is a relatively new release that I very much enjoyed. I finished it, oh, you can see Harry, and then I finished it about a month ago, or a couple weeks ago, and it was a really lovely read. So that's the Brontës. Sticking with the Brontës, I have a book based off of Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, which is a phenomenal read. If you want like quintessential fall literature, Jane Eyre is amazing. Obviously, it centers around a young woman. It's a coming of age story who has a pretty dark and brutal childhood. There are a lot of conversations about education and female friendship within the novel, and she ends up like meeting this mysterious man who really gets Jane to question her own morals and ethics, especially as somebody who is incredibly spiritually minded, who really cares about her inner life, which is really what I think this book is all about. Even though sometimes it gets sold as a love story, which the love story component is strong, but I think it's so much more about Jane's character. Just not only her personality, but her strength of character. It's a phenomenal book. A book that I read that was so similar in many ways in terms of the connection to one's inner life, one's spiritual life, the questions of morals and ethics around one's character, and how decisions, like moral and ethical decisions, essentially shape your character, is going to be Anya Seton's Catherine, which is a phenomenal book. It's a 14th century love story set in England between Catherine Swynford and John of Gaunt, who is the Duke of Lancaster. And it very much has the central character really reminds me of Jane Eyre in that we meet her around the same age. She's young, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thoughtful, is very considerate about her inner life, and makes decisions that definitely put her morality and her ethical judgment into question, and the way she internalizes that. One of the most interesting things about this book is that with Jane Eyre, we don't see Jane grow up. We don't see her past the age of like 25 or something. And so there, you sort of stop at a true coming of age story, the passage of childhood into adulthood. And then right when they enter adulthood is where the story ends. With Catherine, on the other hand, we see her into adulthood and actually as an aging woman, which I think was so fascinating because so many elements of her life shape her, like motherhood and watching her kids grow up and just loss in general, things that really get into one's life and shape who they are. And so in some ways, I feel like this is Jane Eyre, but with when we see her like 30 years beyond the age of 25, which is really fascinating and really interesting. Very satisfying, very incredible, like very good book. This is a great book, okay? It's so good. And there are so many like, I don't know, events that play out that are very cinematic. Anyway, I can go on and on about this book and it's phenomenal. All right, the next book, what do I have here? Okay, the next book has to do with being set during the Victorian period. And it's about a real event that happened during this time period, but it is set in France. So we are with Queen Victoria's reign, but like in a different country, right? And this is The Paris Express, which is a story about a train disaster. Now do yourself a huge favor and do not look up anything about this disaster. Like don't go and read the Wikipedia page, even if you're normally that person. Usually I'd be like, do what you want to do, whatever. But in this instance, I really think that you should, no, like just don't. Now, there could be some argument that if you already know about this incident, then it would be very fascinating to see if, like how Emma Donoghue actually shapes the story. Like where is she going with it, right? So even if you know about it, you could still read it and get a lot from it. But I think that if you're going in and you don't know much about this incident, and I keep on saying incident, and I'm like, I can't think of another word, that I would just say, don't look up anything about it. So this takes place on a train ride. It's a singular train ride from on October 22nd in 1895. And with this, we get this incredible motley character type group. I think that's really the best, the best explanation for this. And so similarly, if you were riding a train for a very long time and you had the ability to sort of poke in and out of the train cars and like get to know each of the persons on the train, that is how the book feels. That is very much how the book feels. So you get these quirky characters, these oddball characters. You get to know about some of their inner lives, whether it's the good, the bad, the ugly, some of their pasts, and why they're on this train. And then you're also barreling towards what is going to be essentially a disaster. And so there's this anxiety, as even though it's introduced right away that there's going to be something that happens. I don't know. It's like, I think emotionally I wanted to distance myself from the characters, because I was like, I don't want to get to know a character and love them. And then they die. Like that would gut me. But what ends up happening is that even though I was trying to emotionally distance myself from the characters, Emma Donohue's writing is so good that I was still like immensely sucked in. I was like, tell me more. I was very much rooting for each of the characters and wanting the best for them. And she was somehow in just not very many pages, in like sort of a very short amount of time, because the book is fewer than 300 pages, I believe. She's able to get you to care about so many of the characters. And I don't know, it was a really satisfying read. Of these books, I think this is, they're all pretty satisfying, but this was this is like, right, like peak literature right there. Okay, so then let's move on to, the last two books have to do with like Gothic vibes, right? So talk about Gothic vibes. We'll stay in France. And so in 1798, France is where The Glutton takes place, and this is by A.K. Blakemore. And we're following Tarare, who is a real person. He had the nickname the Glutton of Lyon, and it is because this character, this real person, was known to have eaten things that were both edible and inedible. And so we meet him while he is in a medical situation, like he's medically not doing well at all. He's failing, and he's telling his story to the person taking care of him, who I believe is a nun. And she doesn't really play too much into the story, but you're getting his story and how he got to this place. And it's really interesting the way that Blakemore creates this character, because it's right on the edge of believable. Like, it's believable to its furthest logical conclusion, but she doesn't make you do mental leaps and leaps and bounds. What am I trying to say? She doesn't make you go to the point where you're like, okay, I really have to suspend my disbelief at this moment to really buy into this character. She takes you right to that edge, but doesn't make you jump over the edge, essentially. And so we get Tarare as a boy growing up, certain incidents that happen, how his gluttonousness and the fact that he can eat huge quantity of foods has shaped much of his life. And so that's what's really fascinating about it, is watching this character be like conformed and taking him to the place where he is now, and he is considered like this monster at this point. And so it very much has at the center of it, does society make the monster, or is the monster inherent? Is the monster just a quality of somebody? Which is a great question at the center of it, which is very like October Halloween-y type vibes, but it's not scary. It's not a scary book at all. It just has that central question, which I think is fascinating, at the heart of it all. So anyways, this is fantastic, and it definitely is very mesmeric, very atmospheric, very not spooky, but it just has this palpable atmospheric quality that comes out in the pages, and it is phenomenal. And the palpable atmospheric quality is very, very Victorian for me. It's just like, where you're at. It's it's almost like the scene is utterly alive, and that is exactly how The Glutton is. So my final book is takes place just after the Victorian period. So I think in a lot of ways, the characters are shaped by Queen Victoria's reign because it takes place in London in 1922. And this author has written actual Victorian historical fiction works. Just this one is set right outside of it. And it is The Paying Guests by Sarah Waters. This is 1922 London, and we have a young woman named Frances who is living in this huge house with her mother, and she can no longer afford the home. Like, afford the upkeep of the home. So they have to rent out some rooms upstairs. That's why it's called The Paying Guests. And those who she rents them out to is Lillian and Leonard, or Leo, I believe, and they rent the rooms out upstairs. It is very, I would say it's, in some ways, it's very Victorian because you can tell that that's what Sarah Waters is really into. She's into writing books that sort of feel like Victorian literature or are set in the Victorian period. So that's what this book partly reminds me of. But also it's a large, sprawling novel that takes a long time to get going. And then once the plot takes off, it is like unputdownable in my opinion. It's so great. And so I think of that as a very Victorian quality. Sometimes it just, you're going through, it's taking a minute, we're getting to know all the characters, the scene is definitely being set. Like, there are lots of pages dedicated to the setup. And then once you're in, you are in. And it just takes off from there. So that's what I think of with this novel, and it is fantastic. So that is my historical fiction books for fall that I think you will absolutely adore. If you've read these or have recommendations, please leave them in the comments down below. I would very much appreciate that. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And I hope to see you all in my next one. Bye.